Ooh, the content that I have for you guys here today is special as well as unique. Let's just hop down up in there as I talk about this. So the title of the video is Why Nice Guys See Sex Workers. Now, this comes from the YouTube channel Sex, Love, and Soul. And the reason that this is an interesting video is because this woman is not only a relationship and dating coach of 15 years, but also she used to be a high-end escort as well as the madam of a brothel. So I think that it's fantastic to hear from her perspective because we generally never hear from her perspective. And I would like to add that adult entertainers, scrippers, adult actresses, OnlyFans models, they all seem to understand the current condition of men, albeit much better than women who do not work in those particular industries. And might I add, better than some men that live throughout this world and this culture. They seem to understand the predicament of men even more. And a lot of that is because they make money off of it, right? So they leverage the pain or the need that these men are exhibiting. But I want to listen to her comments to see the things that we can learn based off of her experiences. So without further ado.
Hello and welcome to Sex, Love, and Soul. I'm Mary Knight and I'm really glad you're here. So today I'm going to address something. Some of you may be wondering, how do I know so much about nice guys? Yeah, sure. I'm a relationship coach. I'm a dating coach. I have been for the past 15 years. I started as a relationship coach before I retired as a sex worker. If you haven't seen that in my About Me, I am a retired high-end escort, and I was also the madam of a really popular brothel in a big city in Texas. And most of the men who were clients, I would say like 98% of them, were nice guys.
Now, before we continue to go off into content, I just want to let my audience know that I do not condone S work, but I do understand why it exists. And much of the reason is that a lot of men today just make simple, rational decisions of what to do with their time and money. And it's a lot more time expensive as well as money expensive to take women out on dates, to a 4-day wedding, right, to a 4-day ring, as opposed to just hit up the local S worker on occasion whenever you have that need. But just because I get it doesn't mean that I condone it. Anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah, shocker, right? These men thought that it was easier to just pay for companionship, pay for this intimacy, than to go out in the real world and continue to be eaten alive by women who were out there who were pretty much just after their money. Or just in general, just tired of being disappointed and not getting what they wanted. And so they knew that if they saw an escort, they would get what they wanted.
This is why I love doing videos like this from old hoes. And listen, and I say that respectfully, right? Because she was a young hoe at some point, right? But the thing is that when they tell you things to you, it's not from a biased position. They're just laying the shit out. This is the life that I've lived. Here's what I learned from it. And there's no kind of men versus women thing here. It's just what is presented. Let's keep going.
No muss. I'm not saying that that was right. I'm not condoning that kind of behavior, but I'm also certainly not sitting here judging it. And it's an interesting thing that when I started as a coach, I was coaching women who were married, who were concerned about their husbands cheating. And I actually wrote a best-selling book, it's available on Amazon, called How to Keep Your Man Out of My Bed. It's teaching women why men cheat and how to prevent it from happening to them in an empowered way. Because the reasons that men cheat are not what most people think. I started working for this escort service in Houston, and this was in the late 90s. She was like a mid-range madam, and then I learned, oh wow, I could be high-end, and so then I started working for another escort service in Houston that was a high-end escort service. And then I started having my own place, and then I became an international traveling companion. But I'm saying all this just to let you know my trajectory here of how this all went.
International traveling companion. I'll never stop giggling at the euphemisms that adult entertainers will utilize in order to make their job not seem as like it's hilarious to me.
Was that I would learn that for many of these men, sex was just the excuse. Sex was the pretense for why they reached out. Now, of course, that was true of some men. Some men just really liked having sex.
They really craved that sexual variety, whether they were married or not. But most of the men were these really nice guys who were looking for someone to talk to. They were looking for companionship.
And that's where I really learned about orgasming and you know, for men and women. But, you know, for me, that's how I could actually have orgasms with my clients, was because I insisted that I stay in my own body. I wouldn't let myself float away. I would stay in the present moment. And the men could tell.
Wow.
And that's why I was popular and why I had so much repeat clientele, is because they really could feel that I was there with them. That's what I was teaching men to do, is to be in their body.
They were having this problem at home with a woman who had pulled away from them. And they did their old tried and true method of going right into their heads. So they were not in their bodies. But the thing was, this was not a head problem. This was not a problem that could be solved by thinking. Okay. The whole problem was caused because they were not in their bodies. And so this became really apparent to me pretty early on in my escorting career about men not being in their bodies, because I had become this pretty serious meditator. And on a regular basis, I was going to these 10-day silent meditation courses. And the meditation technique was called Vipassana. And I was really into that. And the whole technique of Vipassana is that you observe the sensations in your body and you scan your body from head to toe. And the emphasis is not having thoughts, but rather just observing all the sensations in your body. And you go part by part, piece by piece.
That's interesting. So she learned a meditation technique that made her a better thought to be purchased. You understand what I'm saying? Because this meditation technique allowed her to stay in a place where I would think most go to, which is, you know, there in their mind, is to a place that I thought most went to, which is somewhere far, far, far away in their mind as the stranger is digging them out. But she would meditate in a way to keep her there and connected to the clientele. And I know there's a subset of women that is watching this content and they're kind of confused because they think that, you know, dudes don't have emotions when it comes to sex. And the thing is like, yeah, like most of the times, no, there's not. But sex is a lot different than having a companion, right? Having a support system, having someone to be able to talk to. And there's little to no better feeling as a grown man, if things are going wrong in your life, to have support, to rest your head down into the arms of a deeply feminine, attractive, as well as comforting woman. And there's a lot of dudes that do not receive that, so apparently they pay for it.
And again, the emphasis is on the sensations in your body.
It was more about being in the present moment. It was, which I guess is Tantra, but it's about being in your body, being with the person that you're with, having the experience that you're having, whether it's awkward, whether it's hot, whether it's so-so, whatever. It's like you're just there when you're available for it. That's what we were doing in sexual situations. And I know a lot of people don't have that experience. It was perfect for me because I wasn't emotionally invested in these relationships that I was having with my clients. So I could be almost this impartial person there, right? I was there, I was available sexually, I was available a tiny bit emotionally, but I was definitely there intellectually for them too. And so it was easy for me to kind of stand back and study this and see them as not as this man that I was in love with and had all this judgment about and needed him to be a certain way. I could set that aside and just observe him as a man, observe him as this beautiful spiritual being.
What's so fascinating about this to me is that she removes any of the current modern day prescription that tells men to be this, that expects men to be that, you know, has a certain requirement from it. She's getting rid of all of that, right? Like, she's not getting emotionally invested, but she strips all of that societal prescription of men away and just talks to them, has intellectual conversations with them, is open there if, you know, he wants to bust cheeks. And because that pressure is not there, or the stigma involved with the pressure, then it makes it simple. Then the men can just thrive. There is no greater lockdown than a man who is married and then in a infrequent or sexless marriage. Let's take a look at the data over here at Statista. All right. Share of respondents that are married that live in a sexless marriage in the United States in 2022 by generation. All right. So you got the baby boomers down here, and 33% of them, you know, and at that age, you know, your sexual organs begin not to work. So I guess that's a little bit more understandable. But then look down here for Gen Xers, those born between 1965 and 1980, 22%. 22% is so crazy. Like, millennials born from 81 to 1998, 7.4%. Now, mind you, this is sexless. This is not infrequent. And I'd argue that infrequent, or at least not to the standards of a man within a marriage, is going to be a lot more than completely sexless. So imagine what these numbers are for infrequency. And this is a large reason why women like this can write books, talk about how to keep your man out of my bedroom.
And have this experience with him and have some pretty, actually, very connected sex. Whatever you want to think about that. I know those of you who have seen sex workers, have experience with escorts, you know what I'm talking about. These experiences that you have with this person who is a quote-unquote stranger can be transcendent, because there's not all the expectation, all those crazy emotions and judgments and, you know, all those things that we put on the people that we love.
I know at the same time that emotional connection that I was not experiencing is what can also make sex really great, right? It can make it terrible or it can make it really great.
Saying that it's transcendent is wild to me. I wouldn't go that far. It sounds like she's still trying to sell the shit. She's got a part-time madame business on the side. Let's keep listening.
After a little bit of time, I learned how to take all those embodiment techniques that I learned in meditation,
To be a super
my being present, and I'm always talking to y'all about being in the present moment and all the being in your body stuff that I talk about all the time. I took that from meditation into escorting.
Oh, yeah.
And when I did that, I guess I had been escorting like for 2 or 3 months.
She went deep into the hyperbolic chime chamber to understand new methods to gain an edge over the competition, so she may defeat Cell with her viscous innards. Let's keep going.
Something like that.
I, at first, just like every other person who is voluntarily a sex worker, I, like everybody else, you get such a thrill and such a charge about the money, how easy it is, how nice the clients are, just how it's like, oh my God, I can just be myself and make money. And you get a big charge out of that. And then, you know, once the excitement, and, you know, of course, in the beginning, there's a little bit of terror involved there too, and a lot of adrenaline. And once you kind of get used to all of that and how bizarre what you're doing actually is, then you start to think, oh God, what am I doing? How can I do this? Why am I doing this? What kind of person am I? This sucks. This is horrible. And then if you decide to stick with it, then you move through that into the other side of that. This was like 3 months in, because I had seen this guy a couple of times and he was super boring. And so when I would, and he was one of these long appointments, and not long appointments because he wanted to do it a long time, but because he wanted to sit there and talk. and talk and talk. And it was always like all this really negative stuff. And he was just a super boring guy. And he was nice, but he was boring. And he was boring because he was negative, and he was boring because he wasn't present. He was just talking at me. And so I would be very checked out. Even during the conversation, I would try to latch onto something I thought was interesting and kind of like go, oh, hey, let's talk about this. But he would always bring it right back around to something horrible that had happened to him. And I don't know, guys, if y'all don't know this, women are not turned on by negative stories and negativity, and by you being a sad sack and feeling sorry for yourself. It's a big turnoff.
Men aren't either. Actually, I was thinking back to a date that I had a couple of years back and met up with a young lady, and literally all she talked about was the negative things that are happening within her life. Everything was a drama. Everything, was down. It was like she walked with a cloud over her head wherever she went, all these friends that abandoned her. It's just like, damn, like, maybe it's you. What I found out is that it's some people's defense mechanism, right? Like, it's like Munchausen syndrome. Getting sympathy for a medical diagnosis, whether it be true or untrue, is similar to talking negatively about yourself in situations like you're trying to gain sympathy for that. Really, the only people that it really attracts is other people looking for sympathy. So then you find yourself in this conglomerate of losers around you and losers that you date, because that's all that you can attract. And really, if you just switch your communication from speaking negatively all the time to positively all the time, then more positive people will come around. Like attracts like.
When the time came for us to go into the bedroom, I would basically leave my body. And so this one time, I caught myself. I was like, where am I going? If I'm not here in my body, where am I? And why am I leaving my body behind with this stranger? It terrified me and it grossed me out. And so as soon as I had that sensation of, oh my God, I'm in my head, I'm not in my body, I just went, boom, right into my body. And we had what I would classify as decent connected sex. It wasn't great, but I was there in my body, and I was able to be with him from one human being to another, instead of treating him like some kind of that didn't deserve my time.
Wow.
I was like, wow, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be in the present moment. I'm going to be with this guy. That changed my life. And then that is why I'm able to speak with a lot of authority about, hey, y'all, get out of your head and into your body. And that's how I was able to teach women about being orgasmic, becoming orgasmic by getting out of your head and being in your body.
Now, for any dudes on the channel that, is into the escort life, this, that, and the third, this is what you have to be extremely careful of, because you're creating a bond or a connection. And let's say it's not even a bond, but you're creating a dynamic with a young woman who has mastered the art of tricking you into false compatibility. It's not her job to heal you for your negatively thinking mind that makes her unattractive. It's her job to figure out a way to look beyond all of that so that you are satisfied at the end of it. So there's a lot of argument that a woman like this can step in between a man and his natural inclination to improve himself to be of benefit or value to a woman today. So instead of fixing his own issues, gets the short-term gratification of this person who has mastered how to make you feel loved and appreciated. This is the art of selling a fantasy 101.
And you guys, that's the same thing. Men who are in their heads either cannot even get an erection. If you can, then you have a hard time maintaining it. And then you have no control over it. And then you think that you're going to make it up by doing other activities. And yeah, that works for a while, but then a woman does definitely get bored with that because she wants to be penetrated by you. Unless you are in your body, that can't happen. So there's a lot of benefits to being in your body, right? And just beyond sexual, also just makes you a better partner, makes you a better person. Being in your body makes you, being in your body makes you a better father, a better brother, a better citizen of this planet. Anything that deals with other people where they count on your presence, you will become a master at that. Yes, nice guys saw sex workers. Some of them were married and they weren't getting what they wanted at home, and they lacked the communication skills to talk to their wives and to express their needs to their wives. Once I got comfortable with escorting and I was kind of seeing the same guys over and over and over again, we established a relationship, a friendship. And so I would ask them, hey, why are you here with me instead of at home with your wife? Like, what is going on? They would tell me that it was because their wives had lost interest in them for various reasons. And I always thought what everybody else thought, that, oh, well, men cheat because they get bored, they want variety, and they want to have sex with a willing woman who's not their wife. And sure, that's an element of it, but it wasn't enough of a drive, right? Their desire to have sexual variety was not the driver. That was not the reason why they were contacting sex workers. It was awesome to them that sex was available, but again, it wasn't the driver. It was the loneliness. It was the wanting a connection, to make a connection with a woman, because they weren't getting that at home. And a lot of times when at home, and this isn't about cheating, this is about nice guys and how nice guys can find themselves in this situation. What happens is that they were ashamed. And they were ashamed that their wives no longer found them desirable. They would feel abandoned, the men, and they would feel like there was something wrong with them. It's a cause of shame, a very deep source of shame for men to be rejected sexually, especially by their partner, their wife, the person they built their life with. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the nice guy gets trapped in relationships, in romances that have reverted to friendship. With most marriages, you're having sex only with that person. So this isn't something that you're sharing with anybody else. And the one person that you are supposed to be sharing this with, this special little world that y'all create together, the other person is like, nah, not interested, deal with it. They try to convince themselves that it's enough, and it's not. What happens in a lot of relationships, like short-term or long-term, is that if you are this nice guy, you can have a tendency to feel like your sexual desires can be a burden on the woman that you're with. I would have men tell me, they would use words like burden. They would also say things like, well, I don't want to bother her.
And a lot of this is the culture as well. It's commonplace to shame men based off of their sexual appetite or willingness. Meanwhile, a woman's normal is what's considered normal within society. Meanwhile, that normal is usually dictated by a false premise that women don't want it as much or as often. But the studies actually don't show that. I think women are far sneakier about wanting it, but I would say it's about 50-50. Nevertheless, it's commonplace for men to be shamed for what it is that they want. Let's finish up.
With my needs. And I thought that was just incredibly sad. They let this rejection crush them. They let it defeat them to the point that they don't want to bring it up again with this person because they're so crushed. And so instead of kind of going, okay, you know what? This is just a temporary setback. I'm saying, okay, this is my marriage. This is my life. This is my woman. We've built a life together. Instead of feeling that courage and that confidence, they start to dwell in the insecurity, in the rejection, in the dejection. And I'm not saying they don't have the right to do that, right? It's not about that. This isn't about, oh, someone's being a bitch. It's not about that. Oh, someone's behavior is weak. And it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's decisions that have to be made. And if you are feeling defeated, when you are looking at women as the enemy, and you feel like they're a victim. Anytime you blame somebody else, you're automatically a victim. And, instead of feeling victimized by women, I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying that. I faced rejection too. It's not about me coming from preaching from on high, telling you how to behave. I'm just offering a little perspective here, that's all, from what men have told me and how men have turned these things around. And it's that letting the emotion of that crush them, and instead of stepping into their masculinity, they start to retreat. And then they do things like abandon their body, meaning going into their head and thinking and churning on these thoughts. And those thoughts are not positive. They are negative thoughts. Then they just perpetuate this negativity, and it's a vicious cycle that goes on and on and on.
You know what I think about when I hear her example of men retreating into their masculinity? Happy wife, happy life. So instead of being able to stand up for yourself, instead of clear communication with your significant other in order to fix something that you think is an issue, you just keep your mouth shut. And listen, some of these guys who are married are also making a somewhat rational decision. I'd say it's a low integrity decision, but it's somewhat a rational decision, which is it's cheaper to keep her. Because if I keep her in this low frequency / sexless marriage, I won't lose 40 to 50% of my ish should she throw a fit if this happens to cause a heavy division within the marriage or the relationship. So I'll just respectably cheat over here on the side while still raising the kids, while still being a husband, or at least being perceived as a husband, keeping the family together. Do I agree with them going against their integrity to do that? No. But again, I understand why they do. Shout out again to this content creator. I'm gonna leave her contact down in the description box down below in case you guys want to go see some more of her insightful thoughts. I think that is interesting, seeing where she's come from to where she is at right now, and then hearing her thoughts regarding this. But guys, leave me your comments down below. Listen, even if you got to get on an anonymous YouTube handle, get down in there and talk to me. Are you guys folks that will go up and hire an S worker to go get it popping? Do you see the value within them? Any ladies, MTRs that are down into the building that have caught a boyfriend or a husband in contact with an S worker, let me know down in the comment box down below. I think this should cause for fruitful conversation. Until next time, YouTube, peace.
You don't wanna see me get vexed. Bars on your phone, tell a man you can't jet. The big the ones who can't stretch. Breaking the neck when we in the car next. You don't wanna see me get vexed. Bars on your phone, tell a man you can't jet. The big the ones who can't stretch. Breaking the neck when we in the car next. That bar need defibrillation ASAP. Get boxed with a straight gap. I'm reminded of mind state they lack. Every time that they climb, we go way back.